Let's welcome Jason Wright of Webfor to Clark College today.
Thank you for having me. Thank you, Bruce, for the invite. Excited to be here and excited to walk through my presentation. I have fond memories of coming to Clark College. I graduated in 2007 and in 2008. My career trajectory has been wild and fun and educational. There's some of that we'll go through today. The title of my presentation is Tips, Tricks, Tactics, and Technology in the Digital Marketing World, or if you want to remember it easily, TTTTDMW. We have a running joke in my office because our boss has acronyms for everything. It's 3 P's and the 3 R's, and he's got one called PEEP, and he's got all kinds. But there's a lot of stuff we're going to cover today. I'll start with a little bit about myself and introduction. That is me in the middle. At the time when I think it was Hot in Here came out by Nelly, so that is me actually turning white Nelly. Yeah. Maybe not so socially sensitive these days, but at the time it was pretty hilarious. I am recently engaged to my fiancée, Soraya. We're going to get married later this year. She's been a big part of my life, and I love taking photos. I birdwatch. I go out to Litchfield. I go out to Tualatin Wildlife Refuge, take my camera, and get away sometimes from all the hectic day-to-day stuff. I have a 2.5-year-old boxer, pit bull, sheepdog, something, I don't know. She's hilarious and a pain in my butt, but she's a big part of my family. I go and play disc golf with the Webfor crew every now and then. Anybody in here play disc golf? All right, cool. Do you know which course this is? It's Leverage.
I was going to say, it looks like Leverage.
Yeah. We have a running disc golf round that we do at the last Sunday of every month. We kind of travel around and play disc golf, and it's one of the things that can be really great about an agency setting is that there is a lot more camaraderie between people. There's not necessarily cliques, but there's people who are interested and comfortable being around each other outside of the office. And so we make an effort when we can to get together. That might be game night, we might go see a movie, we might go play disc golf, and that helps in the agency setting. We'll talk about some of that a little bit later. I also make movies, so when I'm not sleeping and not working at Webfor, I make short films. I am, I guess you could say I'm a YouTuber. That's, there's a lot of YouTubers out there, but I enjoy putting things together. I enjoy teaching people. I enjoy putting content together, and my personal objective and goals is if I can inspire someone through something I did to take some kind of action to make something of their own, then I've done my job. So that's something that really motivates me. There'll be more context to this later. I've put together some commercials for Tesla as part of a contest. I've put together Imagine Dragons music video as part of a contest, and this is going to make more sense why I'm going over this now. It ties in with the concept of being willing to get out of your comfort zone, which is a big part of growing as an individual in many different ways. This is part of the Webfor crew. I think this was at, what is this, Search? This rooftop party? One of them. But they have their photo booths, and we'll grab the wigs and furs and whatever else and take some ridiculous photos. So, of course, that's me with a microphone and some weird stick thing and the hat and all that stuff. We're pretty crazy at Webfor. We try and keep things light. So where I want to start is the understanding that the path to your future starts with you, and that's really very, very true. And I'm going to provide some of my own personal experiences to provide some more context into why I feel the way I do about some of these things. And you might hear your parents say this, or your friends say this, or someone has said this at some point. It takes hard work and determination and all of these things. It's pretty cliche, but it is true. I wouldn't be where I am today without working very, very hard. Most college students are working very, very hard. There's a part-time job or a full-time job. There could be a parent. You're taking 6, 8, 12 credits, whatever the college allows you to take for a quarter. And that's what it takes, though. We're willing to grind it out and put in the work and put in the effort. It takes time. So everything that you achieve is going to require hard work and time. It takes time. Millennials get a bad rap in that there's this feeling or theme that they got to have it now, they want to have it now, they're not willing to work for it or put in the time. And you hear that in the agency setting, especially in digital marketing, because more often than not, people who are millennials don't necessarily understand or know what their career path might be. And the reality is everyone is working just as hard. They're putting in certain amounts of time on their own, and they're getting to where they want to be their own way, not following the typical, maybe, quote unquote, old school paths that many people are familiar with. With that, of course, comes energy. And energy is a tough one because it's grinding it out after you've already grinded it out. It's putting in the hard work and time and pushing forward and still having that extra 10% to give. So when I'm working at Webfor, I might put in a 10-hour day. I might go home, work on a blog post or a podcast, then work on some video stuff for multiple reasons, because I want to challenge myself, I want to put in the time, I want to grow a skill set, or I just want to have fun. Commitment, pretty obvious. If I don't know how far along you are at Clark College and what phase of your education, but you're here and you continue to be committed to your education, and that is extremely important. Very, very important. As I get older, it becomes more apparent how important that is, because I see other people around me who graduated high school, who had a shot at college, and they decided to drop out, went a different direction. They might go back later, but haven't so far, and that's affecting them now as individuals and growing. So staying committed is really, really tough. Even when, again, your energy's running low, your interest maybe is running low, staying committed and pushing above that threshold is what's going to get you to that next phase in your career, in your education, whatever that might be, whatever obstacle is facing you. So on the screen here, you're going to see a career trajectory, and I have 3 bubbles. How many of you, with a show of hands, believe that this is not legit? So going from food clerk and graduating from clerk to becoming chief operations officer.
I would just ask who you know.
Yeah, that's a good question.
No, that's not legit. I would just ask who you know to get from there to there.
So show of hands, how many of you feel like maybe this is not legit? Okay, man. This is my actual trajectory in terms of how my career has unfolded. And we'll get into roles as well. But I started at Taco Bell in 2000. And I put this on here because everyone has that first job. They have that, cashier job. They have whatever it might be, server, whatever that is to get you through college. I worked in retail for a good 6-7 years with grocery, I guess, between Albertsons and Winco. But I graduated from high school, graduated from Clark, and joined my first agency in 2007, right as I graduated from Clark College. And I continued and earned the second degree at the time. There's a little bit of crossover. And so in 2008, I graduated again. And in 2014, I joined Webfor. Now, in terms of roles, this is kind of a nightmare just to look at, but what I'm showing here is how much my role has changed over the last forever, I don't know, 17 years. It's changed quite a bit because I started as a food clerk and then started working the register at Taco Bell, then moved to courtesy clerk at a grocery store, then a cashier and floor, and so on and so forth. When I got to my first agency, which at the time was Doug Williams and Associates, I was a link builder, and they had a proprietary platform, and we did this whole thing that was called reciprocal linking, where you would say, hey, I put a link to your site, you want a link to mine? And these days, nobody does that, and those that do don't really know or understand how much things have changed. So I started as a link builder. Then I became developer, then I was design developer, and then project manager, and then operations manager. And these things unfolded in the way that they did because of the energy, the commitment, all those things I mentioned earlier, staying focused on building a career. When I left Doug Williams and Associates, they became ITX. I decided to leave and started over in some ways. I started at Webfor in 2014 as project manager. 2015 I was operations, and then chief operations officer at the end of 2015, but really the beginning of 2016. So that is quite a switch and change and quite a path, and everyone's path is going to be different. It's possible that this could be true for somebody. It's totally possible. But I bring this up because this may not even be the longest path there is, but it was a long path to get to where I am today. So in my case, nothing ever happened overnight. It was years of commitment, energy, and focus to make it happen. So I'm a fan of throwing up some cheesy quotes from movies because I am a movie buff and I watch probably more movies than I should. So I'm going to run through a few of these because I love these. Some are from books, some are from movies. You can ask me later which ones. Fear is not real. Danger is very real. Does that sound familiar to anybody? Any guesses on what movie that was?
I don't know what movie it is, but somebody just told it to me on Saturday, so it's like, whoa.
That's awesome. And you can. My goal is to not. My goal is to open you up to ideas and thought processes and things that might help you along the way. Because one of the things that was really tough for me as I was building my career is getting out of my comfort zone, getting out of the box, basically, because the box is warm, it's comfy, there's walls, there's a lid, I can stay in, and we're good. But getting out of that box is what pushes you to the next level. I would have never met some of the people that I met had it not been for getting out of the box and expanding who I knew, and my horizons.
Jason, what made you want to get out of the box?
There was a couple things, to be honest. There was a couple personal decisions because I grew up in more of a sheltered atmosphere, so I grew up in the box. You know, it was never a thing that something happened and I kind of went back into my shell. I'd always been in my shell. And there were just a certain chain of personal events. There was a particular period through college where I was in a tough spot. Things were happening financially. I was trying to get through math here at Clark, and I had to do kind of a reset on my whole focus, and that started getting me out of my shell. There's a few other things in here that we'll add to that in a second. This one I think is really important. You will never get what you want by focusing on what you don't have. Because if you spend a ton of energy sitting around thinking about the car you don't have, or the whatever it is, the house you don't have, or the apartment size you don't have, or the educational degree you don't have yet, you're wasting time. You're wasting energy. I think there's a time and place for everything, but if you were to take all of those seconds and minutes or hours and pack them together, how much could you have accomplished with that energy, instead of stewing on things you don't have, focusing on things that you can do, the actions you can take now to make that impact. Another fear-based one, everything you want is on the other side of fear. Now, fear is emphasis because we put up our own walls. We are generally afraid of judgment, people judging who we are, judging our knowledge level, judging our creative ability. And by the way, show of hands, how many people in here are going to Clark for some kind of design-related degree? Okay.
Web and graphic design.
Okay. Now, how about development, coding? Okay, perfect. Yeah, so coding and programming in its own way is a very creative, skill set as well. A lot of people look at design, and a lot of people fear design in that they might be comfortable designing, they might have fun designing, but when you have to design something for a client, that's where fear can set in, and sometimes people get stuck behind that wall of fear and don't want to move forward because, again, you're afraid of what someone might say about something you did. And I love what Aaron Draplin said, and if you don't know who he is, look him up. He's a local logo designer. He's fantastic. He's got some great videos on Skillshare, and he said, just put everything out there, man. He's like, just put it all out there, even if it's garbage. Like, just put it out there. Someone's gonna like your garbage. Like, don't worry about it. Don't stress about it. Just keep producing. Someone's gonna like your garbage. And I thought that was great. And I just, of course, started uploading all my garbage up to the, website that I have. But again, pushing beyond fears. From a development standpoint, especially agency setting, but even being a developer one time, is always this sense of building something that's sustainable, something that's not going to break, something that's compatible across browsers and devices, especially these days. And there's an art form to that, and being detailed and being specific and precision in development. This is a great one. David, I can't remember his last name, but he was at the Portland Creative Conference, and he's a writer from DC Comics. And he mentioned while he was on stage, everybody says to him, they talk to him and like, wow, this is so great that you broke into the industry. He's like, no, I didn't break into the industry. Like, I was a college dropout, I thought I could illustrate, I couldn't, and so I dropped out, and I worked as a server for 10 years, I tried to start my restaurant, and then, at 35, 40 years old, he decided, maybe I'll try and do this again. Met someone, that someone introduced him to someone else, and all of a sudden he started writing for DC Comics, and is still doing that today. His path is really great, and I think the Portland Creative Conference might have those videos out there. But I love this because he's like, I'm 45 years old, I didn't break into the industry. Like, I did all kinds of other stuff, and then it just randomly happened. Like, I met someone and was able to push forward. Now, forgive me because I can't remember if her name was Angelina or Angela, but she was also from the Portland Creative Conference, and she was fantastic. She was talking about being a fashion designer for Nike and Adidas and a wide range of other brands. And she walked through this whole exercise that she went through at one of her companies, where she realized she was designing things that she enjoyed designing, but was never able to really showcase her talents. There was other talents that she had that people weren't seeing. And through this exercise, she came to the realization that so many people fear being their true versions of themselves. We get caught up sometimes in career, and we're afraid to, maybe you're a data analyst at a company, but you illustrate in your off hours. You write comics, you do things like that. Her whole point was to not hide your true self. In other words, be comfortable in your own skin. Like, don't be afraid to just be who you are. I thought that was particularly powerful. This is great. You don't need a title to be a leader. So in terms of like hard work and commitment, energy, again, all those things I was talking about earlier, you don't need a title to have those things. You don't need a title to be a leader. A leader is much more than Chief Operations Officer. That's a very corporate title, but there's a lot of things behind it that actually the reasons why I am where I'm at. And it has to do with working together with people, collaboration, understanding, hard work, determination. This, by the way, is also a title of a book by Mark Sanborn, who has The Fred Factor and a couple others that are really great. This one, It's Okay to Love Many Things. Stanley Hainsworth, for creatives. And when I say creatives, I mean designers and devs, the whole ball of wax. He said, stop stressing out about being interested in many different things. If you feel like you're a photographer one day, be a photographer. You want to make a movie tomorrow, go make a movie. Like, don't stress about it. Just get that creative energy out. And don't be afraid of backlash on that or being hyper concerned about not being focused, because sometimes on the creative side, the energy comes in waves. You might be inspired to make a mobile app, or you might be inspired to design a magazine, or you might be inspired to do something in a wave. But find ways to channel that, and don't be stressed out or afraid of changing focuses on a regular basis, because that is kind of the entrepreneurial mindset, is you're kind of always on to the next thing. It's like always seeing that shiny object in the distance. It's like, oh,
even
shiny.
Even day it keeps your head working.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, taking some of what I've been talking about and segueing to how you build. Did you have a question?
Oh, I saw back through, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Outside voice.
So, networking is kind of an overused term. There's some better terms out there for it, because really when you go to these things that are up here on the screen, you're opening yourself up to an opportunity of maybe 60% learning, but 40% meeting people. And that's the very critical thing about finding an agency to work for, finding maybe freelance work and things like that, is meeting people. So if you stay in your room or in your office all day and you don't get out and aren't meeting people, you can't be upset if you haven't expanded your opportunities, because in order to expand opportunities, you need to have people. You need to have that network of people that you communicate with and that you're building your rapport with, because that will lead to many other opportunities. So a real example of this, I was at Clark 2005, and Derek Jesser, who is also a student here, had already been working for an agency for a year. We got to be friends, and a year and a half later, he recommended me to Doug Williams & Associates. And through my relationship with him, I ended up getting the position there, and the rest is history. It's meeting people, even in getting clients, going to, say, SEMPDX, great events that they put on every month, and you just get to meet people. You get to meet people who are CMOs, you get to meet business owners, and through that you can find people who need work. They need someone on their team, they need an SEO specialist, they need a developer, whatever that might be. And a lot of times people who go to SEMPDX specifically have technical needs. Like they have stores, they have some kind of app, they have more complex features and things outside the normal 5-page website with a contact form kind of thing. Digital Marketing Quarterly is great. Webfor puts that on. It's free. It happens every quarter. You can find it on meetup.com and join the group there. Digital Summit and Engage are great conferences for learning and education. The Portland Creative Conference I recommend to anyone interested in design or film, video, anything that is on kind of the creative end of things. LinkedIn, making real connections. So that ties into again meeting new people, and it is so hypercritical to be able to open yourself up to meeting people and increasing your social engagements. It's very easy to go to an event. You saw the talk. Just like after this is over, you're probably going to leave as soon as whatever the last thing is said, you're going to be gone and out of here. And it's those, I always tell this to my fiance, it's those micro moments that make the difference between a connection or not. And that's really what I'm getting at is connection, connecting with people. Because I might meet someone in here today that we might shake hands and talk for a few minutes, and then a year later I might see you again. You're like, oh yeah, we should sit down and talk one day, or oh, you're doing this thing now? Well, let's see how we can help. So communication and relationships are critical. Just quick pointers in terms of meeting people. Maintain eye contact, not awkwardly, but maintain eye contact as much as possible. Like, if I were to pull out my phone right now, I put it away, but if I were to just stop what I was doing and be like, oh yeah, it's cool story, bro, and just look at my phone, you're losing the connection, you're missing an opportunity. And it's tough because we have so many things that beep and ding and chime and ring and take our attention away, but that's where the real connections are made, is when you're shutting down and focusing on those connections. Social media is actually really powerful. Now, when I say social media, I don't mean go and copy an article you saw and then retweet it, or tweet it out 5 different times with 6 different versions of hashtags and repurposing the same thing that's already been said. Really, with social, again, sounds cliche, but be a part of the conversation. Like, be a part of the community as opposed to dumping info that's already been dumped. So instead of thinking, well, maybe I should post 3 times a day for 5 days a week, which is what we think about in the agency setting, on Twitter, think about taking that time and energy and design something, or code something, or see if you can create an Alexa skill, see if you can develop something that you can then maybe write a short blog post about, put out there, put it on Twitter, and get people interested. I don't know how many times that, I go to a lot of Comic Cons. Anybody go to Comic Cons? Okay, cool. Last one I went to was Wizard World, but it's interesting because I did kind of this sprint of going to a bunch of Comic Cons for a couple of years, and I met, as anyone who goes there, all kinds of actors, but then I follow up. Like, I'll go on Twitter, and they'll be tweeting about it, then I start engaging, and then we're exchanging conversations, and then we're getting involved in other discussions, and things just happen. Young Lee, who is a YouTuber, I kind of tracked his progress because him and I were kind of starting out at the same level, and he exploded. But he was just, at the time, a kid putting videos up on YouTube, and 6-7 years later, he's now working on things like The Kingsman and Jackie Chan films as a previs artist. No college degree, just YouTube, and applying himself and improving every single time.
These days it can be a bit difficult for people just starting out because of the whole algorithm thing they got going on with their copyright.
Yeah, it's the copyright thing is a nightmare.
Yeah.
Especially when you look at some of the many big brands, especially a easy target is Nintendo, who even if you have the coin ding or you got the mushroom sound, like, they're going to come after you and not necessarily come after you, but start placing ads on your channel and on sidebar as another video because they own that content, and that's their agreement from a licensing standpoint. So it can definitely be challenging. I have one video up there that's like, it's only got 30,000, 40,000 views. But it's funny because it's probably my oldest and worst thing that I've probably put on YouTube. Pretty close, but gets the most views. And you know, part of it is knowing your audience, but that's a different subject. The one thing I wanted to touch on is, in terms of social media, don't try and spend time posting on Instagram and posting on Facebook and post on Twitter and then post over here and then post over there. Just stop. Like, focus down into a small core set of social profiles. So like for me, I kind of got rid of everything and I just focus on Twitter and Facebook, and really nobody's on Facebook anymore in terms of what I'm using it for. So I mostly use Twitter and LinkedIn. And LinkedIn for professional related things, and Twitter for whatever else. Most of the time, creative work, video, connecting with people. If you're a photographer, it might be Instagram, might be Flickr, might be some other platform. So you have to find what works with you. The biggest thing is be real, and you really have to care. That's really critical when you are building relationships. You actually have to care. So you can't walk into a conversation and just be like, oh yeah, it's great to meet you. Yeah, this is great. Yeah, great conversation, and be totally fake about it. Like, you actually have to care, you know, about the connection you're making and the conversation you're having. Put your energy into it. When I look at hiring in terms of creative people, developers, designers, content writers, whoever that might be, we're always looking for culture fit. And I think you're going to find that in a 5 to 15 person team, more often than not, is someone who gets along with everybody else, because generally that means you're working in a smaller space and you're going to be spending a lot more time around each other versus a 40 or 50 or 60 person company with many different offices and a big floor plan. So we look for culture fit. We have a policy about not hiring a-holes. So we actually interview people and we say that. We're like, yeah, we have an no-a-hole policy here. Like, we don't hire jerks. That's not what we want. If you're a jerk, then I guess this is over. But we go through a process of phone screening and interviewing. But that's another big thing, because again, we have an emphasis on culture, hiring the right people. So we want to make sure that we are controlling that as much as we can and maintaining that.
Are there a lot of Asholes out there?
Oh.
Yes, there's a lot of Asholes out there. And actually, a lot of it has to do with people not understanding the impacts they're having in communications, because the difference between being confident and being arrogant. And arrogant puts you right into that category for us, and we move those people out of the queue. So knowing how to manage your confidence is important. Even if you just produce the best 3 things of your life, you still want to be humble. You can still be confident, just don't be a jerk about it. Some practical skills, which are straightforward. I mean, we learn a lot about this stuff in communication classes and whatnot. Eye contact, attention to detail, being able to, this is not taught so much, and I had to learn the hard way, but being able to take the criticism and understand that it's when someone says, the design you produced is really just not good. Like, it's off the mark, it's not where I even thought this was going to go. Instead of getting back into that box, you say, oh, wow, I really thought I had this laid out pretty well. Where do you think specifically that went wrong? Is it because maybe I used too much neon green, or is it, did I do too much black with white? Because sometimes what we find in the agency setting is that they'll say, this is not right, this is not really what we were looking for, and it was because of the text that was in the design. It wasn't even the layout, it was the headline and some content.
Yeah, those are those are the opportunities really you look for. I mean, you hate it when somebody says, "Oh yeah, it's good," because you know they're just they just don't want to mess up.
Yeah, and it's you're working with people, and everyone is different, and communication styles are different. We have the scenarios where you have those meetings, and they're like, "Yeah, it's okay, yeah, wow, that looks pretty neat." That looks good, and then the next day you get, 600-word email that's like, I just don't think this is what we were looking for, and it's like, okay, well, let's get on the phone and talk this through. And more often than not, it just comes down to communication and understanding and really knowing what they're after, but also knowing what questions to ask, and not just shutting down when someone says, this just wasn't good.
Well, so often they don't know the client doesn't know what they want, and so you're going to have to throw something out there for them to push against.
Yep.
And you may even know it's off. In fact, I know designers that they'll purposely put stuff out that they know it's going to hit the mark, be off mark, but they want to get the reaction out of that out of the client.
Yeah, it's getting the reaction. It's funny because there's no cut and dry way to handle these situations. It's so different in every case, and the best thing you can do is understand that it's just information. So you don't want to take a criticism as an attack, and we do that very, very often. I still do it today. It happens because we're humans, we want to defend what we're doing, but the reality is, if you think about it unemotionally, it's just information. Okay, I produced X, and they said Y. Okay, now I'm going to ask some follow-up questions to clarify and figure out where we need to go. So understanding how to deal with tough situations is a key component to being successful. It's a difference between falling. It's also the difference between falling into that a-hole category or not. It's having grace even under pressure, that ability to move forward even when you're getting grilled or in a really tough spot. Because it's going to happen. It happens to everybody. In terms of some software and tools, things that we use, anybody here interested in digital marketing, as in like search engine optimization, Googlebot and how it crawls your site, things like that? A little bit. Okay.
We need to be aware of it.
Yeah, especially for developers and designers, everyone needs to be aware of it. Anyone who's producing a website especially needs to be aware of SEO, because when you work in a setting where people provide SEO services, they're going to want to make sure that site is built to specifications so that a SEO technician can get in and edit things, modify, change elements, drop in title tags, things like that. Screaming Frog is a great tool. Anybody here know what Screaming Frog is? No. Free tool. You can download it. Crawls up to 500 pages on the free version, or you can pay a one-time fee for a license. But what's great about it is if you get a freelance job or you get a gig and it's like, yeah, we want you to redo our website, I always start with Screaming Frog. I go in, I drop in webfor.com, it scans the whole site, I export it to an Excel sheet, I upload it to Google Drive and play with it from there. What that does is it just grabs all the pages or all the URLs on the site, so you can kind of keep track of how much work it's going to take, how much effort it's going to take. It's also handy in the estimating process. Again, so if you are freelancing, or even if you're needing to provide someone an estimate in a different setting, understanding how much is on the site is a key component to providing a quality estimate. MindMeister is great for sitemaps. Sitemaps is something we put together all the time. In our company, we focus on laying out strategy, creating a content plan, taking that to design, and then taking it to build phase, then release phase. So in the content development phase, we use a sitemap tool. And Screaming Frog, we take all the URLs, we figure out how we're going to map out the site, start going through some UX related tasks to figure out how the sitemap might have to change to better meet the user's needs. So great tool. SEMrush is great for keyword research. Anyone who wants to do some keyword research should use SEMrush. There is a cap after so many searches, but there are other tools.
What you say? What kind of searches? I'm sorry.
Keyword research. So if you want to rank your personal site for graphic design Vancouver, you would put this into the box here and find out how many people search for that. The tool might say only 10 people search for that. Okay, probably not the phrase you really want to go for. So it's handy for things like that. We use it all the time. There's other tools you can do that as well. Moz has a tool that you can do that. Moz Local is great for citations and understanding how someone's listed. If I were to, let's say, pull which I should have done it, but if I were to put a company in here and look up their primary address and plug this in, probably tell me they got all kinds of inconsistencies. One of the things we don't necessarily realize is Google crawls a lot of the big directories, a lot of the big third-party sites to collect location data, to correlate everything together. So if it's looking at all these different third parties and sees that, well, Clark College has an address here, and then there's this building that shares the same suite number, and then there's this place that shares this other thing, that's going to create an issue. There's going to be a ranking challenge with that because you might not show up in local results because there's too many conflicts in how you're appearing in other directories. So Mozlocal is a great tool for that. If you want to know how many links are pointing at your site and where they're coming from and the quality of those, Ahrefs is great. Open Site Explorer is another great one. And Majestic SEO is another link tool. Links are a huge component to search. That's like getting upvotes and likes. The more likes you have, more popular you are, and that's how basically links equate. If you're Jane Doe and you like something versus Tom Cruise liking something, well, Tom Cruise's like gets more weight, and that's similar to links. If you have a government site that's linking to another site, there's a lot of value there. Trello, I assume many people are familiar with Trello, great card-based task management system, assigning, sharing boards, and all those things. For designers, there's a lot of things that are out there that you can use. I know that from an agency setting standpoint, InVision and Sketch are becoming the standard. InVision is a great tool to integrate with Sketch and upload your comps dynamically into InVision. And what InVision allows you to do is have your comps inside of the framework, and you can create buttons and links to things. So say you got a big design project and you've got 14 comps that you're creating. Well, through InVision, you can link them all together and make it feel like an interactive site without it actually being a developed site. You can make dynamic changes, or you can make changes inside your Sketch comp and load changes right to InVision from Sketch. So there's a great integration there. I'm not as familiar with Sketch. I have played with it because I come from the Adobe Creative Cloud days, which many people still use Creative Cloud because it's a great set of tools. It's interesting to see how design is changing and how the tools we're using are changing. Some people use Affinity on iPad for photographs and posters and things like that. Many people are using Sketch and Illustrator for vector shapes, and Photoshop for raster images. So yeah, Creative Cloud. I'm sure most of you are familiar with Creative Cloud. Adobe Comp. Anybody use Adobe Comp? Adobe Comp's pretty cool. So I use this on my iPad, and it's a great mobile app for creating layouts, wireframes. Basically, draw a box, creates a box for you. Drag it around. you can easily drop in images, and so it's a kind of a nice, fast way to prototype by drawing things out on the screen.
Is this comparable to Adobe XD, the wireframing tool, or is it like, does it replace that?
It doesn't replace it. XD is newer software that they released. Adobe Comp's a little bit older, but also Comp is only on mobile devices. So I don't know if XD is on mobile devices or not, but I know it's a desktop app.
So that thing's handy when it comes to mobile design.
In terms of development, and even for designers, really anybody who's working in an agency, obviously HTML, CSS is a must. PHP at my agency is a must. PHP knowledge is going to take you much further, being able to modify things. We primarily work in WordPress, but we have worked in Joomla and Drupal. I've worked in .NET Nuke and a lot of different platforms throughout my career. We use Coda and Sublime. You can also use, when I was here at Clark, way back in the day, we were using FrontPage, which is awesome. And we were also using WinSCP. People still use that. And FileZilla, of course. We still use that as well, depending on what we're doing. You might be familiar if you're using WinSCP. And FileZilla, you might have used Notepad++. Yeah, Notepad++ is great.
Brackets.
Inspect Element. So in Chrome, you probably know, also in Safari and most browsers these days, you can inspect Element. However, in Chrome, maybe in a couple other browsers too, don't forget the little, you can't really see it on here, but underneath or to the left of Elements up there in the top right, there's a little phone icon. You click that, and the browser will render the site in a mobile format. So you pick from a drop-down menu that's just above the Webfor logo. You can't really read it there, but it says iPhone 6. You can change that. You can change portrait and landscape, refresh the page, and it'll render as best as it can. So we use that quite a bit for testing. I think I already mentioned WordPress, but knowing WordPress is going to be huge. I know most of the major firms here in Vancouver are using WordPress for a lot of their development. Some are using Joomla and whatnot. It's probably based on the circumstance, but Webfor is WordPress-based. Gravitate is WordPress-based. Gravitate has created their own custom theme, so they like to sell the idea that it's WordPress powered by Gravitate, and that's kind of one of their primary pitches. But WordPress is a great platform. Many moons ago, it wasn't nearly as capable as it is now. So we do a lot of work with ACF, Advanced Custom Fields, and create plugins and things like that, and make modifications while maintaining the integrity of core.
Yeah, that's the critical thing. I found I worked with WordPress in the past, and we have these beautiful sites, but they were terrified to upgrade because they knew everything would break.
Yep.
So it became a security mess.
Yep. And that's tough thing with any CMS really is that, especially when they jump major versions, we have about 50 clients on one of our servers that are too outdated and we need to upgrade them. And we have the same fears as everyone else, because clicking that update button is, you need to take some steps before you do that. Back up the website, back up the database, then try and upgrade it and see what broke, and then try and fix it. It's come a long way. Unfortunately, that's why we need developers. That's why we need people on teams to help us through those challenges. In terms of marketing yourself and building your own persona, again, just to summarize here, be yourself, be authentic. Use things like Buffer and Hootsuite to help you post social posts to your profiles. I only say that because sometimes you'll be up at 1 a.m. in the morning and you'll think of these 5 things that you might want to say on social, or maybe you finish this art piece at 3 a.m. Well, maybe throw it into Buffer, set a schedule in there, and let Buffer kind of push it out at a time when most people are going to be awake and see it. Because I forget what the statistic was, but a tweet on Twitter only lasts a certain number of seconds or less than a minute. I can't remember what the stat was, but you know, if you post something at 3 a.m. and you want people to see it, it's not gonna have people see it.
It is really, really vital to know when you get the most views wherever you're posting stuff, because that's where you want to capitalize it.
Yeah.
And they have a lot of monitoring and analytics and stuff like that you can use to actually check where your audience base is for you at what times. Yeah.
Do you use Twitter right now?
I don't. I need to set up one for myself for professionally. Is probably what I would use it mostly for, because I still hang out with most of my friends and everything on things like Facebook and other places, just because that's where I know where people are.
Yeah, exactly. One of the things that they often talk about to start off is to post things within the time frame of East Coast, because of the greater numbers of population and whatnot on that side of the country. Posting, you know, if the hot time is 6 p.m., posting at 3 p.m. here on the West Coast to maximize the effectiveness of that. But again, you know, it's one of those things that social media can also be very irritating. So it's also why, you know, I say keep the profiles down, try and keep it focused as much as you can, because there's a lot of noise in social media posts. I think one of the things that has really helped me is, again, being authentic and creating connections, but also having a website and being able to refer people to it, because you don't want to be stuck in a position where someone asks, well, hey, what have you developed? Oh, well, I've done some really great things. Yeah, I've done this and this. Okay, well, you know, do you think you can send us a sample, or can we see it, or do you have a screenshot or maybe a clip? Oh, no, not really. And then you're up until 2 a.m. in the morning trying to put it together so they can have it the next morning. Yeah, I've done that many times.
That's called homework.
Yeah. So having a basic site, even if you're not tech savvy, there are a lot of different hosting solutions that allow you to one-click install WordPress and things like that. Not that it's the best solution, but it is a solution. It's a way to get your content up. So I think I'm going to skip over this slide, because I want to get to this point, which is not hiding behind a corporate mask. Again, being real, being yourself. And then something that's really, really helped me in terms of getting past those fear barriers. And of course, he stepped out right at the time when it would have made the most sense to be here. But
laughing when he comes back.
He's got it on video, so we're good. Yeah, right. So this really changed my perspective. And I don't know if I think I read this probably somewhere, which is, you may never see these people again. So while I'm here in this room right now, I don't know how many of you I'll ever see again. And we might all live in the same town. For all I know, you live down the street from me. I have no idea. But even if you make a complete ass out of yourself, it's okay, because you may never see these people again, and you have the opportunity, you know. That's something that's really helped me at networking events specifically. I go to a conference or I go to some kind of engagement, and before I walk in, I'm literally in my car telling myself, doesn't matter, I'm gonna have fun, gonna take in information, and probably never see most of these people again, but hopefully they get something from me worthwhile, and that's that. And that, for me, relieved a lot of anxiety and pressures. Understanding it's okay to screw up. Like, it's not, I don't know how many times, like, I've bumped into somebody, I spilled a beer on somebody one time, I dropped a glass of something on someone's shoe, like, you know, things happen, but I don't even know who they were at this point. and we laughed about it, and I made an ass of myself, and that was it. So just keep that in mind. Like, if you are the kind of person that struggles maybe to kind of just randomly get up and start meeting people in a room, that understand that probably most everyone else feels as awkward as you do, and that at the same time, you might not ever see these people again, but if you do, you could be making that one connection that makes the whole difference. Yes. Yeah. That. Just because you get into that mindset and it's like, hey, you know, might never see these people again, it's fine. It doesn't mean you can be a jerk. Like, don't be a jerk. It's just, again, being professional and being real with people and connecting without being a jerk is key, and understanding that, you know, people have the same fears you do. And I mentioned this earlier. You know, don't fear what might happen in small portions of time. I'm here right now, and I see a couple people have passed out every now and then, and a lot of people might get awkward about that. You know, they might feel uncomfortable about that. But it's like it's understanding people. It's understanding that in certain moments in time, some people are going to get more out of one aspect than another, or one portion of a conversation or another. So to kind of wrap up, it's not easy, again, thinking about those circles I had on my screen. It's been a long road to get to where I am, and who knows where I'll be in the future. Maybe VP of an agency one day, maybe president, maybe start my own. Who knows? My path isn't over, and I think that's something to remember, is that you could be an app developer now, you could be a print developer now, or a designer now, you could be a web designer right now, but that might not be what you always be. It might change and shift over time. Find creative focus. So this is something, out of all the things I said about, oh, it's okay, do a bunch of different things, one thing that can help, depending on where you're at in your career, is slimming down your creative focuses a little bit. There does reach a time where you can't be a COO and a logo designer and a graphic designer and a print designer and a web designer and a video guy and at some point you have to bring that down. And the reason for that is, it's not that you can't dabble, it's that, do you want to be a jack of all trades and master of none, or do you want to get really, really masterful at a very small subset of things? So just something to keep in mind. Again, work hard, contribute to the world. You know, get your voice out there, get your Alexa skill out there, get your app out there, whatever it might be that you're working on. Maybe you have a unique style and flavor and creative work and design. Get that out there and show it off, because you're probably the only one who has that style. You know, it's you. Do you have a question? Okay. So couple people to follow on the digital marketing SEO side. Rand Fishkin is great. Whiteboard Fridays. He's kind of the main figurehead in SEO. He's worked for Moz. He started Moz, and he's been with Moz for something like 20 years. Dennis Yu is another content marketer, social media marketer. Will Reynolds is just great, from office management, operations, to content marketing and strategy. Ian Lurie is great for search engine optimization. And Ollie Gardner is something that I haven't touched on, but for people both in development and design, understand the importance of conversion rate optimization, because that is a growing area of interest in the agency setting. Understanding that what you are creating is never going to stay the same, and should never stay the same. If you launch a site in 6 months from now, you design, dev, all these things, that should change probably 2 months later, 3 months later, a month later, depending on the analytics and whatnot, because the hot terms in the agency world is CRO, and and optimizing sites for conversions. Getting people in, getting them through the funnel, getting the contact, and moving on. And there's a lot of ways to do that. On the creative side, anyone who's interested in video, Andrew Kramer's great for his tutorials in After Effects. He worked on Star Trek credits and a number of other things.
Star Wars.
Yeah, the Star Wars.
He did the lightsaber. He has the lightsaber thing for Freedom Empire.
Yep, he's got lightsaber tutorials. Yeah, and
No, this guy right here worked on Star Wars.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Awesome.
We won't say his name.
There was a gentleman at Portland Creative Conference, and I can't remember his name, worked on Star Wars and practical effects and whatnot, and The Thing and all kinds of stuff. It was fun to listen to go through all the processes there. Wyden and Kennedy, of course, from an agency standpoint. Aaron Draplin, I mentioned earlier. Kim Adams, was a producer for Pixar, Disney. Now works in VR, which is a whole new world. Fantastic and Blue, or however that song goes. Follow me for creative stuff. Educational tools, you probably know about a lot of these. Lynda, Skillshare, Treehouse, conferences, of course YouTube. There's just tons of stuff on YouTube that you can just get by Googling. YouTube's the second largest search engine in the world. So there's tons of information out there.
YouTube's where I learned half my crap.
Yeah.
The other half of it I come to this guy for.
Yeah, back in my coding days, it was, what is it called, W3C Schools?
Yep.
What
Oh,
is
yeah.
it?
Yep. Nope.
And PHP.net, I believe, was the other site that had a directory of functions and all that stuff. So yeah, it's the good old days at this point for me. Anyway, if you want to connect with me, there's ways to do that. I'll post this presentation online as well and send the link out, and Bruce already has a copy of it too that he can send out. Please feel free to reach out. I do respond to pretty much everything I get. So if you have a question, you have a thought, you want to share something creative that you have or something that you're working on, let me know. I might be able to get feedback or connect you with someone who might be able to help you out. So that's it.
I have a question. Since you're, you were a former student and kind of found your way into there, now you're like interviewing in operations. What are you looking for when you're hiring junior designers, junior developers, people fresh out of college? You may not have, the 2 to 3 to 5 years experience, but we may still have our life experiences. What are you looking for, and how do we show that confidence, not the arrogance, in a junior style work when we can't say, oh, I've already done 10 of these websites?
Yep. Good question. In many cases, especially recently, we've hired some people based on their culture fit and some of the applicable skills they have, and not really that they have 3 years content writing experience for SEO or something like that. We are looking at ability and commitment. The personalities that fit within inside our culture. I don't know if that answers your question, but we aren't always necessarily looking for, in designer's case, a 50-page binder portfolio printed out and handed to us. In many cases, I'm looking for, well, how is this person going to fit with a team? What do they know from a tools standpoint? Are they familiar with Sketch? Are they not? How do they feel about learning a lot very quickly? So it's not as cut and dry, because we have sometimes found really great culture fits who didn't know a lot about the role, but have applied themselves and now are some of our top team members.
Cool.
So actually, I'm going to add 2 questions. First one being, you were talking earlier about, you've got to get outside your comfort zone. If you're like freelancing, you got to be able to talk to somebody. My biggest fear on that has always been, well, what happens when there's that conflict? We've watched videos of the F you pay me, where it's like, no, you pay me for the work that I did. I'm not a confrontational person. And So that's my biggest fear with it. I'd much rather work with a corporation than work freelancing, because the idea of having to confront somebody and go, no, I did this work, you need to give me money for it, regardless of whatever your excuse is. How do you get out of your shell to deal with that? Especially if you're on the wrong and you don't realize it.
Yeah.
And then the second question was, you mentioned you're doing a podcast. I'd like to know what it is, but you.
Yes. So first question. A good friend of mine, his name's David Portney, works for 3Q Digital out of, I think it's San Francisco, somewhere out there. But he told me one time years ago, he said, hard on process, easy on people. And so I always keep that in the back of my mind, because when it comes to difficult challenges, I like that. When you have those tough communications where maybe there's a confrontation or there's a lack of understanding or something like that, I go easy on the person, even if they're not going easy on me, and I think about it from a process standpoint, the nuts and bolts of it, as opposed to maybe all the emotions that are coming into it, and looking inward. So what could I have done better? Maybe I'm in the wrong, and actually this happened recently, where we were in the wrong for something. And the thing you do is you say, we're in the wrong for this, actually, and here's our solution. The worst thing that you could do is just keep doing this, butting heads and fighting, just wasting time, energy, stress, all these things, all the negative pieces that come with it. It's coming to a solution by being honest and transparent. So maybe if it was a process failure, for example, maybe they said, I don't know what the specific case is, but if a client said they wanted red in their design and you gave them blue, they're like, this is not what I asked for. Like, well, this is what's going to work for your audience, yada, 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 but this is not what I asked for. You know what? I understand it's possible I might have missed this in my notes, and I have a solution for this. Give me 3 days, I'll go back and revise this, and by November 15th, I'll send you an updated version. It'll be to specification, and we can move from there. Okay. The biggest thing in handling challenges is getting to the solution as fast as you can in terms of communications, because you don't want to do this thing where you're going back and forth. You just get on the phone or send that one email that's like, you know what, I get it. I've put time into this, but okay, maybe I did screw up this. All right, I'm going to be humble about this. I'm going to change my process, and I'm going to deliver a solution. The solution is, it's going to be fixed. Here's the exact bullet items we're going to fix on this date. That's how I handle those situations. I am a details person, so I had to train myself not to send 500-word emails because I would just send a wall of information, and so nobody's going to read that. It looks impressive, but no one's going to read it. The second one is I'm starting a video podcast, and it might be a video or creative podcast about becoming creative in a competitive industry. So I've fleshed out the first season, start recording probably next week.
Good luck.
Yeah, thanks.
What is I think you kept saying this term a lot. You kept saying Alexa skill.
Alexa skill?
Yeah, what is
Alexa.
Isn't that being like an app for the Alexa?
Yeah. Alexa is an Amazon artificial intelligence platform thing.
Is it really that popular? Like you're comparing that to phone apps?
Well,
yeah.
Smart home. If you think about it from a technology standpoint, we have we started with giant phones in our houses. They got smaller, things got more compact. Then we went mobile with flip phones. Then we brought the internet to our phones, and now we have social media and email and all these things. Now we have wearables. There was Google Glass for a little while until they shut it down.
Ooh, it's back.
Yeah, I know.
Which is weird.
Yeah.
Too many glass holes.
Yeah. The marketing is really tough for that. But you have watches, and the thing is it's looking at what's the future. You look at the big players, Apple, Google, they're getting into car technology, they're getting into smart home technology. So Alexa, Siri, Google are all trying to push their own software and hardware and devices, because that's the next generation, is having your whole ecosystem. And that's one thing that Apple has done for so long, and other competitors are starting to get up to speed, is Apple has always had an ecosystem of things communicating with other things. But now other people are coming up to speed, and it's going to be a race between who can, get the cars out, who can get all the smart home devices in, because then one day it almost feels like it's like an episode of the Jetsons or something, where you're going to walk into someone's home and it's going to be like, oh, this is a Google house, because you've got all the Google devices, the wearables, the glass, the phone, and you've got to have it because they all talk together. Because if I have a Google Home, I'm not going to have a Siri, enabled device, because they can't communicate.
Melissa, I have an Alexa skill that I built, and I made a video of how I built it. I'll share it with everyone in the Slack random channel.
Cool.
Okay.
And as a result, it just happened like today. I was asked by the Evergreen School District to create an Alexa skill for them because they saw my YouTube video.
Okay. Interesting.
Is the YouTube video the Van Talks?
No, the YouTube video I did was how to take the Idea Jam software that my company created back in 2007 and how to use its API to get information from Idea Jam read to me. What are the current, how many ideas are there? What are the top ideas? Who are the current, contributors? And I can have a conversation with my Alexa, and it would read that stuff back. And I illustrated in the video how I use Python and Amazon Web Services, specifically what are called Lambda functions, to talk to the Idea Jam software to have a conversation with the Alexa device.
Nice.
I'll share it.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's cool.
Chrissy had a question.
Yeah, the question that I had was about the screaming frog. Could you explain that a little more?
Yeah.
Because I didn't quite
Sounds like a cocktail.
understand
Just
that. Something like a fire.
So Google has a bot, Google bot, comes to your site, crawls a certain amount of data, and creates decisions based off that data. Screaming Frog is a bot that you can send to your site and pulls every URL. So if you have a 1,000-page site, it's going to list home, about, service 1, service 2, service 3, service 4, service 5, so on and so forth. But it also pulls in other things like broken links, broken images. It pulls in title tags, meta descriptions, H1 tags, alt tags, and other things that are incredibly important for SEO. I'm probably using Screaming Frog twice a day, and I'm COO. Like I'm not actually doing SEO these days, but I'm putting together estimates, and I'm looking at sites, and I crawl them to get as much data as I can. We do things with it like export the data out. It also gives you word count for every page.
That's cool. Wow.
And so one of the things I do is take that and I find out what their average word count is across their site, because the amount of content you have on a site is important for Google, and maintaining a certain average or above is best from a best practices standpoint. Does that help?
Yeah, I wasn't clear, so.
Yeah, it'll list things like it'll show 302s, 301s, 404s.
So all like errors and
Yeah.
inconsistencies.
Mm-hmm.
Permanent
Yeah.
redirected pages,
We use it a lot for building confidence in our proposal and sales process, because by doing a crawl of we did this actually recently for a 50,000 page site, and seeing that 60% have duplicate title tags or duplicate heading tags is going to be a big negative for SEO. But we use it for all kinds of projects. So we just redid the Vancouver Clinic website. So anyone who's visited that site recently,
Did you just do it recently?
yeah.
'cause it is, yeah, you did a nice job.
The TVC website is a project, one of the last projects I managed. It was a significant project. Took a lot of resources and a lot of planning. There were 45 designs we created, both desktop and mobile. We used InVision to present, and then it was a huge task because they have several thousand pages on their site. So we used Screaming Frog. We get the list because we really can't miss a page. We have to make sure we bring all that data over.
How do you? I'm dealing with WordPress and you're dealing with medical clinics. How do you deal with the HIPAA issue and things like that? I know they use MyChart, but WordPress doesn't seem like it's very safe and secure for that type of information.
Yeah.
Do you just do something different and stick out of WordPress when it comes to HIPAA type?
You know, in the medical industry, yeah, there's also FINRA for financial, but you know, on the HIPAA side, I'll use TVC as an example. They don't store anything on their actual site. That's the biggest concern they have, is storing personal data and violating that. So they have MyChart.
So MyChart is separate.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
So you can still have links to things like MyChart that are the HIPAA compliant, but they don't. WordPress and them don't cross over, and you're not going to have like things sneaking through WordPress to do that. Okay, that was one of the biggest ones.
Yep.
And the urgent care part of it looks really good, by the way. That's very helpful.
Awesome.
As a parent, who's had to use it about 1,000 times a year.
Yeah, that's great. That was an interesting one to get configured too, because
I call them the waiting room ways, getting up like it's. It's gone through a lot of change in the past few years.
Jason, one thing I want to say before Melissa asks a question, I know, is you repeated something a lot of our other speakers have told us about. Whatever you do, link back to your own site, and that's really important. Like if you're a company, it's not just about having your presence on Facebook or Twitter. All those things and all those social channels and different vectors should point back to your site.
Yeah, a good rule of thumb is that Facebook and social profiles, that's not real estate you own. Like they could sell tomorrow, they could shut down your profile tomorrow. Your 10 years of work could only be posted on Facebook, and if they shut down Facebook tomorrow, it's gone. You don't own it, and they have control over it. So yeah, it's a balance, right? You want to have, for me, my site is home base. That's where most of my content goes that I have, my blogs, some of my other ridiculous stuff, my portfolio things, and I will use that as a basis for sharing. And I don't try and put a ton of portfolio related things in social profiles because who knows how much they're going to change and longevity and all that. You do get, one thing I'll say about social sharing is that sharing your content to social media can build what we call social links and social authority. While Google doesn't rank specifically on social profile follows and things like that, they do say that they use social for signals in terms of quality and followership and things like that. So if you have something like a podcast that goes up on your Facebook page and that gets shared around, or people are posting that on their own to their own feeds, those are referred to as social links because they're a link that exists on a social profile that links back to your site. I think you had a question at one point.
I think mine fell out of my head.
Uh-oh.
Better questions were asked in between there, and I paid more attention to those.
Oh, well. Mine's for when a company or a hiring manager is looking at resumes. I have like a bachelor's for graphic design and stuff, but I only have work that I did in school, and I had to have a lot of jobs and pay bills, so I don't have a like recent work, and that's why I'm going back to school. But it's been like really hard to get a career from the bachelor's that I have, because every time I find a job it says, oh, you need like 4 years experience or 2 years experience, and I'm like, well, do you ever hire? I mean, I know you kind of already answered the question once, but like, is there a way when we're trying to, should we still be encouraged to apply to the position even if we don't actually have those 2 years experience, but we have like some work to show?
Yeah, absolutely.
Even though if it says it's required to have it.
Yeah, still
Worst
apply.
case scenario, they don't give you the job.
Yeah.
I know.
They do.
Yeah.
Yeah, but with a lot of like job finders like Indeed and stuff like that, if you apply for a job, it gets lost in the algorithm if you don't meet those qualifications. So when you put in an application, it won't ever be seen by their HR.
It's true that it can get blocked. We use Indeed internally, and we have Zoho Recruit is something else we use. And you can set parameters on your Indeed profiles to just basically outright deny people who don't meet certain requirements. From my standpoint, and it's interesting because I've been there, so I understand. And now I'm on the other end where I get tons of resumes. It's like nope, and it's tough because I see the education, I see the college, I understand where people are at. Here's the thing, which is just basic rule of thumb to remember for resumes. Make sure that it looks nice, it's clean, and there are no errors. And you just get so many resumes with errors. So many resumes that are templated, and people are copying and pasting and then changing the role and changing something else. Taking the time to customize your resumes for the role is important.
How many pages are you looking at for resumes now? Some are doing the one page, but like I can't even fit education and work on one page. For some of us that have the gray hair, like it's hard getting from 3 to 4 pages down to 1 or 2. Like
it's really hard because it depends on the hiring manager. I have seen something that I've really liked as of late. A couple people had applied. One we actually hired with 2 different resumes. One was their short form, and one was a long form. So if we didn't want to look at the long form, we didn't have to. But I did because I could look at the short form, and if I wanted to, I could look at the long form.
So turning in both.
Yeah, I'll do both.
So you mentioned some SEO experts. What would be better, to hire an SEO guru to optimize your site, or to pay Google to rank you up better?
Great question. So when you pay Google for ads, you are paying to play, and we say this all the time to our clients, pay to play. So you want to be seen a lot and get a lot of clicks, we actually just put a proposal out for $50,000 a month in Google budget. That's just for their ad budget monthly. And they'll get seen a lot. They'll get 2.5 million impressions in Google, which, by the way, means the number of times that ad is seen in search. That'll equal about 10 to 15,000 clicks per month, which is a lot. Those still aren't conversions, though. And here's the thing to remember. When you are just paying money to Google, that will work and can work. You need lots of income to do that. But also, the big negative is you're not really investing in anything. Like, you're not investing in your own site and the features and the UX and the things that makes the experience really, really great. So from our standpoint, we actually don't do a lot of paid advertising things like Google Ads. Just every now and then, when they're kind of bundled with other services that someone's interested in, we push people away from that, because organic SEO, where you're optimizing a site and you have your SEO people optimizing a site, takes a longer amount of time, but has the highest return on your investment over time. But it just depends on, the capital that the company has and where they want to go. So if you're looking at a small site or something like that, don't spend money on ads. Spend money on developing the site.
What's the difference in cost between using a paid service like Google Ads and having an in-house SEO?
Yeah, so it's pretty dramatic, because there's a couple different routes. There's the if you are Nike, you might have your in-house SEO person. So you have a salaried employee and all of the things that go with that. If you are looking at an agency standpoint and you're trying to decide between paid ads or organic and the cost differences there's always the thing about paid advertising. When I say paid advertising, I mean ads. you can put as much into it as you want. You can put $500, you can put $100, you can put $50, but you're just not going to get any activity with that. Most organic campaigns, organic being non-ad based. And by the way, our organic SEO services is on-site technical SEO. It's keyword research, content development, link profile development, and a series of things is going to cost you a fraction of the amount. So we have, I'll use a real example. We work with a local roofer contractor, and his campaign is about $1,800 a month total. He has doubled his business in the last year and a half, which is a product of what he provides as a service and a product of what we're providing to him in building up his site and his authority and all of these things. So to answer the question directly, when it comes to ads, if you don't have $5,000 a month to spend, probably don't even think about it, because again, you could have $1,000 that you're putting towards it. But if you have $1,000, maybe hire somebody who knows SEO, even as a freelancer, to go through and fix your site and update things.
Because it will end up being less costly and more effective in the end.
Yep.
The other thing with SEO, right, it's not a one-time thing. It's a continual thing, right?
Yes, another great saying of mine is that your website and SEO is not something you set and forget. It is a plant. It needs sun, it needs water, it needs new soil. Sometimes you got to trim it back. You got to maintain it over time. So yes, we get that a lot. Sometimes when clients they'll say, well, we've done this for 6 months, so we should be good now. It's like, well, yes and no. You're going to be good for now. But I know a good portion of the community, and I know a good portion of people competing in a certain area. And in 3 or 4 months, 5 months, your results are going to dwindle. You're going to have issues. You're going to fall back in search. And if you're not in the top 3 results in organic, if you're not in the local, what's called the local pack, just the map, or the knowledge panel on the side, people aren't scrolling beyond that. And in terms of conversions and whatnot, that's where it comes from.
Is there a way, or what is the best resource, I guess, for looking at a particular type of product or service and when it's best received? For instance, like you were talking about times of day for posting things on Facebook or Twitter and things like that's where I'm going with it.
Yeah, so it's pretty funny because you can do all the reading you want about when to post. You know, there's so many clickbait articles about the top 5 things you should post about, or the best times to post when X, or the best time to post in the holiday season. The reality is it actually starts with you and your audience, and it depends on what you're talking about. If you are a sports enthusiast and you want your Twitter profile to focus on NFL, then you're probably going to have higher activity on days that there are games. You know, Sunday, Monday, Thursday, things like that. So it comes from knowing your audience, engaging with your audience, and then actually looking at your analytics. I think that's something you were mentioning earlier, is looking at time of day and sort of things like that.
Okay, so looking at your own analytics is the best way to steer that boat.
Yeah.
So you know where your audience is.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
She was talking about last week that you have to know what your audience is and when that window of time is open.
Right, yeah.
And be consistent with that, because when it's gone, the moment is over.
Yeah, it kind of blew me away recently. I was looking at this on my social profiles, and I was just thinking, well, how am I getting I feel like I'm getting more activity from celebrities than I should be or that I deserve. And I was just looking at activity. I'm like, okay, well, I feel, it's one thing to feel like you do something at a certain time, and another thing to actually look at the data, because there's power in data. Because I think, well, I post at like 3 p.m. and 4 p.m., and I look, and it's, well, actually my audience engages with me at 9 and 11 p.m. at night and 6 a.m. in the morning. It's like, oh, okay, well, I should change my routines a little bit to work around that. So yeah, data analytics, Twitter analytics, really powerful. It starts with understanding your audience. If you really want to get into Alexa skill development and you start creating a conversation around that on your social channels, then you're going to build an audience for that using different hashtags and whatnot, and that audience is going to engage with you within certain time frames. So it kind of falls back on that thing of, you know, it takes time. You got to get your feet wet a little bit and see where it goes.
If your routine's completely off from your audience, there's usually tools that allow you to post at certain times anyway. So you might as well make it at like 3 a.m. when you usually do a bit of a post.
Exactly.
Everybody's going to see it.
Yep.
Yeah, that's where the Hootsuite and the things that you were talking about,
Yep.
where you can kind of control when your content goes out.
That's right. Yep. Yep. Buffer's great.
I got a question about just your trek professionally with technical. You started out and then, yeah, way back in the beginning.
Yeah, I'm getting there. There we go.
There it is. So as you went from developer to design developer, project manager, operations manager, that's a fairly short period of time to go through that. Were those opportunities that were presented to you, or did you ask for those?
Good question. It's a combination of both. It's a combination of asking and also being in the moment, and my boss asking. And that's where the theme comes in about being committed and understanding that you don't need a title to be a leader. Because, yeah, looking at this, I mean, I went from link builder, like totally entry level. My first desk was a slab of junkyard wood that was bolted onto the side of the wall with a random steel rod underneath to hold up the one corner. My monitor was a like 8-inch CRT monitor. It was that like yellowish color, and the keyboard was click 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 click. You know, the whatever they are. But that's where I started, and just through applying myself, also through my education, because as I started going through the development degree process, I started working on things for the agency. Got into a lot of WordPress development. Then one day my boss came by and he's like, you know, I think we need project managers here. Do you want to be a project manager? And that's how that started. I was like,
No, I love this desk.
So you didn't go to like PMI training or anything like that?
No, actually I'd never been through PMI and all the different certifications. We just hired someone on to the team who has 10 years of experience. And one of the things we say at Webfor is we always want to try and hire people better than ourselves. And when she came in and we interviewed her, I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, I don't even know what I'm doing, because compared to this resume and the knowledge over here, I got nothing on this. So anyway, to get back to the question, it's a combination of applying myself and being there in the moment. Had I not shown the ability to be a project manager, I would have never been asked to be a project manager.
You've worked in agencies for a while, and so you like that lifestyle and the workload and all that?
So, I am of the personality type that has a hard time doing one thing all the time. So if I were an in-house person at Nike, that might be cool and it might be engaging and work with great teams. It'd be the same thing every day. It's the same shoe thing. It's the same, you know, let's optimize this headband page. That's okay, and that is definitely for some people. But for me, I like the the challenge and the variety. Because we've worked with everyone from like volunteer to big hospitals and clinics. Do some work for OHSU. We've done the Vancouver Clinic website, and there's many other things we've worked on. So it keeps it fresh. You get those things that come in for like, oh, we need urgent care functionality on TVC's website. Okay, how are we gonna do that? Is there a script for that? How do we? Yeah, so it's fun challenges.
I mean, do you have sales guys that sell things that your developers are just like scratching their heads? We're not gonna be able to do that.
Yeah, that happens. We sold something. Actually, TVC was a good example of that. We had all the skills in-house, but in terms of their big challenge is getting people into their specialty areas and getting to that content easily, or getting to a doctor easily. So that posed a unique challenge for us because we've never had to deal with so much data and correlation between data, because they got doctors who are connected to locations, who are connected to specialties, and so we're using advanced custom fields and all kinds of things to try and make it happen. So yeah, it happens more often than I'd like, but
how much of your development is driven by your salespeople?
How much of our development is driven?
Yeah, I mean, what kind of stuff do the salespeople come back with? Do you go, oh my goodness, we've got to figure this thing out and do it?
I would say 20% of the time. And usually, the thing about it is that 20% though aren't things like, oh, well, they want a fancy custom contact form. No, they're more like, oh, we need a highly integrated system where 6 databases are talking to each other with cross-referencing of 6 different data sets. And so in terms of complexity, they're usually more challenging.
How well integrated are your sales staff with your development staff?
So, another good question. We are, in terms of like sales staff, we're trying to follow the model of your clients are your best salespeople, and establishing authority and creating focus around relationships as sales, as opposed to grinding for sales. So when we talk about the relationships between sales team and other people, it's very, very close, and I actually am the one who manages a lot of the estimating process and am actually doing some of my own sales. So in many cases, I've worked for an agency that was 150 people, and they had people who just their full-time job was to be estimators. So salespeople came with the challenge to the estimator. The estimator went to the development team and went through all the jargon and all the info and all the details that they needed and came back to sales.
So it's a linear process.
Yeah.
One more question we have time for? Somebody?
Well, I had a question. How long did it take you guys to do TVC?
That was PTSD it is. Just breathe it out, man.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
It was a great project, you know. We brought them on board, and we were really excited for the project, and we all agreed to a 4-month turnaround time.
Oh wow! For how many web pages or how many pages?
It was like 2,000, I think.
That's not a long time.
Not a lot of time. For like 40 to 60 designs, all the build out, and of course the big search features inside of that, and the urgent care, and just all kinds of stuff. But what happens in any project is that it never goes according to plan.
No.
The best thing you can do is be ready for those scenarios. In our case, it was wanting to get it right, and them working with us collaboratively. And I think that's really something important that I wanted to mention, is that we work collaboratively with clients. We don't just take a project, okay, well, we'll see you when we're done. It's, okay, let's come in the office, let's talk about your audience. Okay, let's have another meeting, let's build this relationship and go through this. Vancouver clinic ended up taking 6-7 months to release.
How many people slept in the office?
Yeah, we had some long 14-hour days in there. We also had a couple launch windows at 10 p.m. in the evening. One was canceled, and then we stuck to it. So yeah, it was interesting times.
Jason, can I ask one? Oh, someone had a question.
Yeah. Did you have a question?
Oh, yeah. So, just a quick question. Back to the hiring one. Have you ever hired anybody with no resume, just like hired from getting know somebody or GitHub or whatever?
So referral, yeah. We've had some employee referrals that we've hired. So in other words, they might have worked for another agency, or someone knew of someone, friend of a friend, who we have a great connection, relationship with, high amount of trust, and we have brought on people who we haven't necessarily gone through the whole resume and cover letter process with.
But never on like some other stuff. It's like non-referral thing. Because I remember the speaker right here, he said that he never hired people through resume and stuff. He just hired people through other connection with GitHub. Like people that put out their stuff online.
Like
Yeah.
you find somebody's portfolio and go, wow, that's really good, I'd like that.
Yeah, just find like website or something. Like,
Yeah.
I think it was here.
In terms of our hiring, our experience has always been that either someone is referred to us and we sit down and talk to them or get lunch, or they've formally applied. In terms of like randomly finding somebody on the web through maybe, hey, we're looking for a designer who maybe lives in Vancouver, we don't do that. And I don't know of a lot of agencies that do. It mostly comes down to time. It's not that we don't want to. It's just that you're kind of run and gun all the time, and you rely on tools like Indeed and whatnot to pull the data in so that you can move forward.
So it's always a good idea to have your stuff out there, but don't just be waiting for somebody to hire you. It's get yourself out there too.
Yeah, they don't know if you're busy.
You know?
Okay.
The fish won't jump into the boat very often.
Right. Jason, I'm getting the last question in here. What are the tools you use to collaborate internally and with your customers?
Oh, internally. So there's a few. We use Slack in terms of messaging and chat. We've used Hangouts, but since we're on G Suite, we use meet.google.com, so we can invite clients to those meetings and they don't need a Gmail account to access that. But we use things like Asana, Trello, Active Collab is great. We are just transitioning to that. Has integrated billing and time tracking and task management, Gantt charts, all in one. We use Harvest for time tracking. What else? That's the bulk of it. One of the things that I always communicate is you want to condense down your processes and tools and let your processes and tools do the heavy lifting. So it shouldn't always be a grind. All of the weight should be on the process and the systems you've established. Even if you do have 6 tools, as long as everyone knows the process, uses the tools and follows the process in the same way, you're going to be successful, because we work collaboratively, but we rely heavily on processes and systems and people following those, and that allows us to be more efficient over time.
Well, thank you again, Jason.